All right, welcome everyone. Going to order the June 21st meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. I'm going to read the opening statement. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, Section 20, this meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee will be conducted via remote participation. Specific information and our general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 99 or Verizon Channel 28 or online at www.northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event they were unable to do so, despite best efforts, we'll post on the Town of North Andover's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. If the public would like to participate in public hearings, please email your question, comment prior to or during the meeting to ashapiro@northandoverma.gov. The question comment will be read during the proceedings and responded to accordingly. All right, I guess I'm calling to order now. I kind of did that, but order now. All right, attendance. I'm gonna kind of go around the horn. Sean,
Here.
John,
Here.
Jay,
Here.
Holly,
Present.
Stan,
Here.
Chris.
Here.
All right, and then who else do we have? Kelly, I'm here. Like, is that? I can't see who else might be here. So Meredith. No, and George had already said he wasn't going to make it. So I think that's everybody, correct? Okay. All right. So on our agenda for today. All right. So I guess, Andrew, is there any public comments that we got at all? Anything?
Let me double check here. I see nothing.
Okay. All right. So the agenda, we've got the approval of the minutes. One just kind of, it seems like it's been a while now, but report out on how the presentation of the framework went to both the select board and the planning board. And two, just have a discussion on, we didn't get much feedback there in those meetings in terms of making changes to it, but would love to kind of hear from anybody else, like things that we could do to make it more helpful, or changes if anything's come up in people's minds since then. I think it's a framework we can continue to use. And then 5, new business. Stan, we kept carrying the downtown improvement master plan on here. So if there's anything ready for us to discuss there. And then really I'd like to talk about just kind of next, what do we do next, right? What's, you know, what do we, I mean, I think there's a lot for us to do. We need to chip off the next piece. And then I think kind of falls into there. I know Dan had just sent out an email. I think we probably all got it about the 125 improvement project. Kind of see what people think about that. Just wanted to bring that up since that was something that came out.
Kelly, I think it might also be interesting if you and John just gave us all sort of your reflections on participating in town meeting and how you felt that went, because I've heard some very positive things about your collective performance. So maybe you two could just sort of comment on that and tell us what you think.
Okay. We can wrap it up in the whole when we talk about the select board and planning board too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Kelly, can I interject for a moment?
Please do.
Would it be possible for you to request that someone take the minutes? And Jay Dow did it last time, so I would request that he get dispensation from doing it this time around, unless he's a glutton for punishment and wants to do it again.
No. Thank you. I wanted to share the wealth with colleagues.
You're a kind man.
Give everybody a shot at this.
All right. Anybody else burning to take notes? Or not burning, but willing?
I'll give it a go. I haven't done minutes before, but I'll give it a try.
You're going to love it, Sean. Thank
I
you.
love it. Yeah, it's great fun.
I'm sorry, my dog is eating my wall. Hold on. Yeah, not kidding. Dog was eating the molding on the baseboard. Yeah. Okay.
Mine does the same
What
thing.
dogs do. What
Yeah.
dogs do.
Yeah, that's what you get when you have a puppy locked in the office with you all day. Okay, there we go. All right. So, I guess the first thing is approval of the minutes. I don't know if people have had a chance to look at them.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right.
I'll second it.
All right. We'll do roll call vote. Sean,
Yes, but who seconded?
Me.
John,
John, thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Holly,
Yes.
Stan,
Abstain.
Chris,
Yes, thank you.
Meredith,
Yes.
right, and Kelly. Yes. All right. Approval of the minutes. And just a big hole in the wall now. Yeah, I can't. I'm done. Okay. All right. So now just talk about how the report outs went of the report, our quarterly report to both the select board, planning board, as well as Stan pointed out, to town meeting. So John, chime in as we go through. We'd love to hear your impressions too, and Chris, obviously. So we had our quarterly report, which we included, based on our last meeting, the completed framework for both Trinity Royal Crest, as well as for the the proposed housing moratorium. So we had completed the framework, and that was part of the report. So when we did, that was really the bulk of both the select board and planning board meeting. We focused on that. There wasn't a lot of meat on it, in my opinion, in the written report at that point, but it was really on those two frameworks. My impression from both groups is that it was well received in terms of laying out the data, the holistic view of the master plan, that we had looked at all the strategies, obviously not all applied, but identifying the ones that we thought that did, and either gave it that positive or negative. Really the kind of questions that we got from any of the boards is, I think on Royal Crest, we had some things in progress because at the time they were in progress. I think there was a question just, what did that mean? But we were able to answer that. I think the comments, really, people felt that it gave them, from the boards, that it gave them facts to align with. One thing that we did make clear in both times is that we weren't there was no conclusion on either reports. We didn't put a conclusion on there. We just had the individual strategies, positive, negative, and neutral.
We just let the facts speak for themselves. Sorry. And one of the things when leading up to town meeting, and Kelly and I were trying to draft up kind of a speech to go with, it kind of helped us further refine what we've not refined the process, but kind of define what we've done as far as establishing the framework and emphasizing that everything we're doing is a strictly objective analysis of the information presented before us and how it applies, if it applies to the elements of the master plan. So 103 elements for any particular item we're reviewing, what's applicable, and if it is applicable, is it positive, neutral, negative, and at the same time, is it a near-term goal, or a long-term provision? So I think this whole process, obviously, we're all new to this. It's a feeling out process, but I think we're in real good shape of what this group and body is going to do moving forward, what we've already done, and how we can keep moving forward, sticking to what we've established now.
I don't know, Chris, do you have any more
I guess
thoughts?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I would add to it is that the other thing I think it accomplished, well, two things. One, it certainly registered. It really helped even folks, on the select board who've, been sort of tuned into this. It really gave a clear path of consideration, and it really helped, I think, folks, weigh it. And so having that part sort of well defined was very helpful. But the other piece is it also served as a reinforcement of what the work had already been done, because that's one of the underlying questions or things that was kind of kept being tossed out at town meeting, right? Was where's the information? Where's the information? What about this? What about that study? And the Master Plan Implementation Committee really is another way to reaffirm that a lot of this work has been done. A lot of these questions have been actually researched, answered, and now we're at the next point of implementing it. And I think that was sort of the bonus of you presenting it. So awesome stuff.
And then just to kind of more specific on the presentation at town meeting, I'm glad we did it. It was, I don't know if anyone else got the vibe, but we were a little last minute in terms of being prepared for that. So I think it would behoove us as we go forward in the year, thinking through where we think we might have something to say and value to add as town meeting comes forward, and where we think we can put, help present more information as it relates to the master plan and have a more thoughtful approach as a committee for that. So that would be my thought there.
And the only thing I'd add to that, Kelly, is I think there's going to be a ad hoc or whatever you call it, special town meeting, right, for Railcrest. So that may come up sooner than next June.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, so we should try as soon as that. Any determination around that is just that we should make sure we've got our meetings on the calendar so that we can be thoughtful about it. Where do we have that? What value do we have to get up and talk to, so we can get that across in our 2-minute snippet.
I think though, Kelly, now that we have a framework and we've gone through this a couple of times, there are things like downtown improvement or the 125 improvement projects, both of them that may want to get the same treatment at some point. So that, because it seems to me, and Chris, tell us differently, it seems to me this is a very efficient way to present some information also and our thoughts to both the select board and the planning board. I mean, can't be more efficient than this. It's kind of it all boiled down. So, if we were going to try to give them our impressions of any other projects, like, for example, those two, we've got the framework now, so that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've sort of built an expectation of that now, as a group. And I would also add, and maybe this is another discussion at some other point, Kelly, but whether or not, we have the finance committee that speaks at town meeting, and I'm wondering, kind of given the significance of the master plan rolling ahead, whether or not we shouldn't consider that maybe as a part of the warrant. There'd be a statement from the master plan implementation committee. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what we did. Absolutely should think about what's the right way to do it. Is it, as John and I did, as a representative at the microphone, or do we actually have our, 4 or 5 minutes in a slide or whatever that is? But good point.
Yeah, I'll just add to that real quick, Chris. I think in an ideal world, there would have been a mechanism for us to actually have a formal presentation rather than have to rely on microphone time. And obviously, I think you saw that we tried to we had a set time. We were hoping that we'd be allotted a little bit more, but obviously things happen and totally understandable. No issues on our end. But knowing that heading into whatever subsequent townwide meetings would be, what's the proper mechanisms to ensure that if the voice of this body is given time to present, what's the right way to go in about doing it and making sure that it's something that the powers that be actually want to happen. So
right. No, you're right. We've got time to work that out, but I do think that's a good discussion for our chair and to have with town manager, select board, before we get too far into this next year, for sure.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I think and then just on the framework, I think it would behoove us, and by us, I think I was the one typing, but to make sure that I capture notes on all of them. Because I think I captured notes on the first one with the Royal Crest, I think, because we just sort of happened, or I guess I didn't capture them, but people filled some of it offline and put notes in there. So by the way that we filled out the framework for the housing moratorium, those notes didn't get captured. And it's one of those, just trying to come back and remember those cues would have been really helpful. Granted, it was done online, so we could listen to the meeting and understand kind of the background and discussion, but it would have been helpful to have it on the report. So it's probably something we want to make sure we do. We just have the description would be my other thought there. All right, so it sounds like at the very least we like the framework. We want to keep doing it. We need to make sure, so we want to make sure or find out or have a discussion at least to see if in town meetings, when we have something that master plan related, do we actually speak and are part of that. And so Chris, I think I heard you say it'd be discussion with the town manager just to get on the docket for that.
Yeah, I would think town manager, town moderator, and
Okay.
Maybe chair of the select board. Again, I'm not sure how much
Sure.
of this is driven, and Andrew, may have some perspective too, driven by rules, decorum, capacity. But yeah, it's important to have that discussion. So
Okay.
Good. Awesome.
And then completing the framework, do we want, it's like, so it kind of ties into sort of next steps, but do we think that it would apply for the 125 improvement project and the downtown improvement project? Is that, what do people think about applying it?
Kelly, it seems to me that anything that's getting special attention, or that meetings or whatever, we might, as a committee, we might consider whether or not we want to try to apply the framework to that. Right? We can decide ourselves and decide maybe we don't want to, but we can also decide we do. So I think those are two good candidates, for us to think about.
I would add that since the downtown plan is finalized at this point, that it absolutely should be. Of course, I spent way too much time looking at it the other night, but that's definitely something right up our alley. In the more immediate, the 125 thing should be on our radar, but I think we're real early in that process.
Okay. Any thoughts on, is there a group that we should have come and invite them? No, right? No one has to come to us, but invite them to come and talk to us about it, or people feel like?
Can I interject something here? And again, I don't want to be the roadblock. I really don't. But I'm just throwing this out there for conversation. If it's thrown back, that's fine. With respect to the downtown plan and the Route 125 plan specifically, so the downtown plan is called out specifically in the master plan as a strategy, as an item that we should undertake. So I wonder, and again, it's never a bad idea to have conversation and sort of analyze things and understand, okay, how well does this, align with our master plan and the thoughts that we put into that document. But at the same time, being that this is a direct result of the master plan, I wonder if that exercise is necessary. And really to the same extent, the Route 125 corridor, it doesn't call out the Route 125, but it does call out doing area plans. And that is the reason why we did pursue the planning studies to better understand the area specifically, to undertake an area plan pursuant to what the master plan sort of directed us to do. So again, maybe that's a little more broad and generalized, and maybe there could be more to bite off there. I'm just throwing it back to the group for that consideration of that discussion. Is it, we want to take things that are direct results of the master plan and then chop them up further and sort of understand where they fall within the master plan?
Hey, John?
So to that, Andrew, the only reason I'd ask that we possibly get a presentation, and maybe it's from Beta on that, is yes, that the downtown improvement plan is a element of the master plan, but it also addresses a lot of the, at least from the transportation standpoint, it addresses a lot of the other goals in there. So there's some overlap. So yes, it does absolutely address one key element, but it helps. I think it would help explain what some of the other, how it fulfills some of the other elements, so we have an idea what it's looking to do moving forward when we start analyzing other projects that help hit those elements.
Stan?
I, well, I appreciate the comment, Andrew, about the downtown plan being part of the master plan. It was the master plan said we should do one. Now that we've done one, it's sort of a different situation, because now we need to see, maybe we need to reflect as a committee on what the plan now says now that we have one, right? Which is somewhat different than what was written down in the master plan itself, which is we need one, not what do you do after you get one. So, and John could tell us the most about this, because he spent way too much time the other night looking at the downtown plan. So, if he says maybe it's something we have to take a look at, in the same way we did with Royal Crest or the moratorium, then we can at least have a discussion about it. I guess we go that far. So.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, one thing I'll just quickly say is, I don't think we'd be able to get data to give us a presentation on it. We've sort of moved on from the contract. They've maxed out the scope of work they were doing for us. And we did give that final presentation at the select board. What was it, Jean, last week or the week before?
Yeah, it's a blur now. I think it's the week before, but
it would have been the week before. Yeah,
we could watch it, right? If we want, we could, rather than asking someone to come. If we wanted to do it, we could all just watch it and get the snippet. And
it's also the presentation as well as the final report, which is much longer because there's a huge appendix of all the supporting data, is all posted on our website. And the first few slides of the presentation lists the goals in the master plan that were to be addressed. And so there was a goal to do an improvement plan, but almost all of the other items were in transportation, as you said, John. Like, I think 11 of the 14 goals associated with the downtown were transportation goals. And so that is what I used as the basis of the scope for Beta to contract with them. And so that contract does end at the end of June, and I just got the bill for the final invoice. So it won't be Beta, but I mean, I'll certainly be happy to walk you through a presentation on it. But for now, it is all online. And I guess you guys can weigh whether you think materially, once you see that, whether it needs agenda time or not. So
I guess when I think about doing the framework, it's really because what's the benefit of applying the framework to something? It's one for me personally. It distills the information against the master plan, and if that's what we're trying to do to advise people on how things are against the master plan, especially if there's any, what's the value to it? If someone has to make a decision, it's not the answer, but for me, it's just one more piece of information to consider. So if there's anything related to those where it's significant enough where people are going to be asked, whether at town meeting or some other area, to make a decision or choice, that's where I'd see that there'd be value.
Yeah, there's certainly going to be funding required that we're certainly applying for grants, but I envision that there could be some capital outlay that will need to be budgeted for. So, I mean, the time may come that we need the support. So that's, and it's safe to say that anything out of, community development and planning, that the initiatives we're working on are directly tied to the master plan. I mean, those are the goals we gave ourselves, was pulling out certain master plan goals to try to advance them. So I'm quite confident that they align, but if you want to do that same format and check off boxes, it's fine.
Yeah, I would say if we did apply it based on, what Jean was saying, it's really going to be a pretty simple review on our end. There's not a lot of deep thought. The information's there. It's just you're seeing the information, you're weighing it against that, and you can do 1-to-1 in your brains and say, yep, check, good to go.
Okay. So maybe if we do in our next meeting, do the downtown improvement, and then after that, do the Route 25. I think Dan had sent out, there's some meetings going on now that would probably be good for, if not all, some of us to attend to start collecting information. We go from there. Okay. All right, so we kind of branched off a little bit in terms of feedback, or just kind of report out on the framework and the quarterly report and town meeting. now, so then we have new business. So we have, and Stan, I'm not sure. I think that I know this one came from you a while ago. I'm not sure if it's
I think the discussion we just had
oh,
was the discussion I was thinking about us having several months ago, and now I think we've gotten exactly to where I had hoped we would get to, which is, we now have a framework to evaluate things like the downtown master plan. And as Jean points out, if it's an easy evaluation, there's no harm in that. We just, add that to our list of things that we've taken a look at. So, but that's exactly where I'd hoped we'd get to, is here, right? So we got here.
awesome. So for the downtown improvement plan, does anyone want to take the first cut at looking at the 103 strategies and identifying which ones think would apply, so we can do the framework, kind of that prep work?
I guess I can.
All right, there you go, John. There you go. And I'll just ping you. I'll show you what I just went through one, and I tried to be a little more through the net a little wide so people could pull it back.
Yeah, you blew it, John, by saying something earlier.
No, I went to all the planning meetings for that, so I'm just, it's, I don't know. I'm used to seeing it at this point, so.
Most knowledgeable. There you go. And then really the last thing I had is kind of, what do we do next? Right? We just talked about the framework. We had spent a lot of time before within each of our element areas, kind of grabbing, when each element used a little different, I don't know, method. Some of us grabbed low-hanging fruit to check out the list. Other ones grabbed, higher priority items. Is it time to go back to that list, and to what purpose? You need to keep checking those off. What are we doing? What's next?
So far we've had basically proposed development, big ticket items. How do we address some of the non-transportation elements there, because they're not readily apparent? Do we reach out to Rick and community development, community programming, sorry. Do we reach out to FONAT, the Friends of the North Andover Trails? Do they have a long-term plan, or do they have stuff? Do we need to have any discussions relative to the Stevens Estate and the new contract in Mass Audubon? Because that's a protected open space now. Do we have to cast a wider net to look, not in search of projects, but just to see stuff that's out there that might fit into the overall scheme of what we're trying to do?
Yeah, I think some of that had happened before, right? Because that's what people were doing within their element areas, right? For example, I think Holly, you reached youth services, right? But you had talked about, and I think Sean had talked about those were the rail trails and different pieces. So some of that, and I forget which group, but some group, one of the elements areas, I think I talked to DPW, and do we need to kind of sharpen our pencils on that? What's our value of that, and what are we doing? I'm trying to figure out where we go next. I'm looking for ideas. I'm not sure where we go.
Really, I watched the I think it was a planning board meeting, and the presentation of the Route 114 renovations, and that was stunning. That's just a gigantic project, and certainly seems to me that that's a worthy nominee, that we be involved in reviewing that as it goes forward.
So that's a Mass DOT project, if it's the one that I think you're referring to. So
right.
So we brought them in because it certainly intersects with the Trinity proposal.
Right.
However, it's Mass DOT, and town can give input, but not necessarily. There's a public hearing process with them, I guess I would say. They have their own public meetings that they need to advertise, and it.
So it's not a question of their decision making fitting into our master plan.
They're their own entity, and what they want to do is what they're going to do more often than not.
So we have little say there then. That's the
Here's
reality.
what I would say. There are. I don't want to paint it as there's no discussions happening, because I think, as Jean just referenced, they are going to have a public hearing process. So they're certainly going to, have forums for public feedback and comment to come in. And I know that they're having individual one-on-one conversations with property owners along the roadway there, because there's going to be an issue where they're going to be taking property from those property owners, and in some cases it's a bigger deal than in others, and they're trying to create more mobility along the roadway, more mobility for bicyclists and pedestrians, and while also making the road perform better and be safer for everyone. And so I know one issue of contention is that the planning board has done a lot of work to, provide the adequate setbacks from properties on, newer commercial developments, and provide a healthy amount of landscaping. And so that's been a point of contention. Okay, so what happens to that landscaping if you take the property and use it for a shared use path, for instance? And so those discussions are ongoing. I don't, I understand why this board would have interest in that. I just don't know that an additional level of scrutiny or conversation with this board specifically would, and I don't know if there'd be an appropriate forum for it. Like, I don't know if we could get MassDOT to come here and do a one-off, for instance, for the.
Well, that's exactly what what inspired this question was the landscaping concern that the planning board expressed. They had, in past developments of that roadway, insisted on that landscaping, and that was one of the first questions they had for MassDOT was, well, what's going to happen to it all? So there was this, attempt to make that road look appealing, and is anyone watching as the renovations begin? That was one of their concerns. So, that whole thing fits into our master plan is in terms of preserving landscapes and views. So that's what inspired the question. They had it, and so I was wondering whether we should include it as well. They being the planning board.
Andrew, does it make sense on our end, because it's going to be it's a difficult ask to get MassDOT to do a presentation to this group and to itself, but does it make sense for us to plan to have some kind of attendance at the design public hearing when they announce it? Just to get information firsthand.
Yeah, I think it makes sense in general, because I think all of you as residents of North Andover, especially, and I assume each one of you uses Route 114 in some form or fashion, even if it's not on a daily basis, at some point in time, you're traversing 114 for any number of reasons. So I think you should, just as general residents, absolutely, have a presence at those public meetings, anything that they put out there. And the more information that's out there in the public realm, the better. And then you can obviously pass that information along to your neighbors and friends.
And that is
it's up to you guys as to, how you, I don't know that anybody needs to be there as you're representing the master plan implementation committee per se. I'm sorry, Gina, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that is the forum to get your comments on record too. That's really important. And side meetings in this, they don't necessarily get on the record. And so if you do have input, attending those meetings is really important.
The other thing, again, I know we didn't close out there, but the other thing I reflecting on after the town meeting is I felt like when we were talking that we needed to spend time on just saying who we were, that people aren't necessarily aware that we exist and that we're doing anything. So I don't know, I would think it would behoove us as well as anyone who might like to use any information that we produce to do a better job or a different job of promoting ourselves or letting people know that we're here and what we're doing. I don't know exactly what that means, but I don't know if anyone had any similar thoughts of kind of the incognito committee. We're running under the radar.
You know,
One thought is maybe we should get a mascot.
mascot. Yeah. We need a symbol.
So there you go.
Kelly, I think that's an excellent idea, and I think, just like you read the the speech before every meeting, so we can have a remote, right? This could be something that you say before every presentation, like to the select board or just a reminder, because that goes out to the public, right? I mean, that information is broadcast to the public, so it could be just a 30-second reminder of where the master plan, implementation committee, we represent blah, or here's what we're doing, and we have members, and they do things, and just sort of do that a few times, right? No harm in repeating that information, sort of kind of overran the speech, but that's, people need to be reminded a few times before it starts to sink in, as we all know. So that would be one suggestion.
It's a good point, because we do the quarterly report to both the select board and planning board. So if people watch those or even read the agendas, then they know who we are.
Right.
So we have a pretty good process sharing things on social media, Kelly. So if you wanted to share those reports on social media, I'm sorry Sarah could do that. But early in the process, you guys had talked about a communication plan.
Yeah.
And we volunteered Dan to help with that. But so there was I think there was a subcommittee established, and there could be some more formalized way of getting the message out.
Maybe we do. Yeah, I think I started with a lot of gumption there, and then it petered out. So maybe shame on me. That's something we need to kind of revive again. I think there's worthwhile there to just promote it, right? We're going to be saying we're producing these frameworks or reports for people. So what? What are we doing? Kind of build a little bit of a track record and let people know things are happening.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you just kind of look at our website right now, the master plan is sort of buried now. You look at the key, the major tabs. You have Royal Crest, Amazon, the town meeting, and Stevens Estate. Well, I would make the case that maybe one of those last four, the master plan, should be in its place. And that's sort of I'm leaping way ahead here, but that's, I think, part of this communication thing. It needs to be constant. It needs to be very accessible, and part of the communication is getting people to see it, because it is really buried now, and yet it's something that's touched on as much as anything in our town.
But Chris, the other thing what I would say in response to that is, while yes, visibility is really good, that would mean, Kelly, back to what you were saying. So what do we do now? Where do we go? We need another, if we're going to be that visible, we need to have an activity level that supports that visibility. So when people say, oh, master plan implementation committee, that's great. What are you all doing, right? What's up? Right?
Yeah. So you could take, you could you've got the opportunity to work backwards to work forwards. So you could sort of reintroduce it for what was presented at town meeting, and how we're looking ahead. Yeah. And this is what we're working on. This is what you can expect from us. So we can use that as a lever to introduce and set the template. We could, as I say, sort of feed the anticipation of what we're working on, and kind of back and fill along the way. That might not take as much work to do to get it started.
Kelly, concerning where we go from here, I know before I joined your committee, you guys spent a lot of time looking at the elements, and when I was on the committee, I know we all spent a lot of time prioritizing them. Maybe we kind of analyze where we are on the ones that we had earlier discussed, whether they're kind of closed out, they need a little bit more work, and what that might involve. And if they're already closed out, then let's look at the next 2 or 3 that were prioritized and examine those.
They kind of go back. I think that's where we'd started, right? I think we left it a little on the wayside as we jumped into the framework, because we had a couple of hot topics there. So
yeah.
So I'll just add in that the thing that Kelly and I wrote out to present at town meeting, I just had it on my phone, but long story short, it started out with mentioning the master plan, what it is. Then it mentioned our committee and what our task was and what we defined our task to be. And then it dove into, to date, what we've accomplished. And I started off with saying we asked, we recommended that the select board adopt complete streets policy, which they did. We referenced that that's done. That's a checked off item. Good, we can move on. Then we can say and then it talked about us establishing the framework, and ultimately how we applied that framework to Royal Crest and how we applied that framework to the proposed warrant article. That, at least if we get something to that effect up on the website, that gives an introduction, background, what we do. That's a starting point, at least to get some information out there. Now, whether we add in our actual reports, I think maybe that's something we should do. Do we add in our meeting minutes? Because I know if you go to the town's Google Drive, each board or committee has a separate folder with all their information in it. And is that something that I don't know if that's already been set up or if that's something we need to set up, but the one big thing I gained from watching town meeting is that there's a desire for information. And then once that, and having that information relatively easily disseminated to the public.
Okay. All right. So just to kind of things that we're talking about next, right? I think we're settled on the framework for 125 in downtown. We know about that. The other is kind of going back to communication, kind of promoting, probably subcommittee work there to get things started perhaps. The other is, Sean, as you said, kind of going back to prioritizing, within our element subgroups, kind of looking at those again, and seeing where we're at, because I think we just sort of reported out, some were done, some were in process, some weren't looking at the big picture as high priorities we thought we were, and kind of left it there. So that's sort of a renewal on the element on the subcommittees.
Yeah, back to the information on the website and communication. Dan, is this something you could help with? If we just sort of kind of dump this all on you, could you sort of try to organize it for us somehow?
I'd prefer if you didn't dump it all on me, but it's something I would certainly do. Okay. I'm happy to discuss it.
Bad choice of words.
Yeah, I think that if we could somehow figure out how to take, it could be sort of our report card, right? If we take all the 103 strategies of the master plan, here's what the committee, here's the committee's, view, right? Here's what we're doing. Check, this is done. These, 100, these 50 are in progress, so people could see. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of how we can use material we might already have, right?
Or maybe if, to your point, John, if we could share with the community on a website somewhere, your town meeting speech. I think that sounded like a great idea. So if you had that written up somewhere and could give that to Dan, that would be great.
We can do that. Like I said, at least we can put it out there for discussion, if there needs to be whatever. But I think at least it gives us a starting point, if nothing else.
Yeah.
All right. So does anyone have kind of any other ideas or not like these ideas?
No, Kelly, I think the idea of going back to the committees and seeing what we got done and where the priorities are right now is a really good idea. I'm just thinking you and I and George had lengthy conversations about housing, and I just remember a whole set of elements addressing zoning, right? Addressing zoning were high priority items that we never really, talked much about. And what sort of recommendation would we give on a couple of those zoning matters, right? I heard one of them come up at town meeting, the whole idea of apartments added in some of the country zones that would allow people to have in-law apartments, for example. out country, and that would be a way of providing affordable housing. All right, where are we on things like that? So that would be, you and I and George had started a discussion about that, but we never really finished it. So that would be a good thing to finish.
That's a great, I mean, viewpoint, and kind of, because thinking about, I'm kind of, okay, we go back to the elements, what's the result? But the way you phrased it, Jay, I think it really shines a light on it for me. It's the, so what is, what do we start to promote to the select board, planning board, or any other groups based on the master plan, right? So those, there was those ones related to zoning. There could be things within the other elements as well that we then kind of bring forward and goes, dear select board, dear planning board, and or other groups, if that makes sense. Here's the things that we'd recommend in the next time frame that you undertake based on what people are looking for in the master plans. Maybe that's how we look at what people like, that idea of, that's how we look at it within our element subgroups. Again, it's, what are those, and it's might be one, it might be three. I think it depends on size. So each subcommittee is going to have to make some judgment calls there, but we decide, what do we bring forward? And that's what we go with the next time. I think that gives us something really more to sink our teeth in versus just kind of looking at data again.
That makes sense to me, Kelly.
Okay.
So then, procedurally, how do we go from here? Do we all speak or communicate with folks within our independent subgroups and come up with a little report back, either in writing or verbally, to before the next meeting?
Yeah, I think that's what we do. I think we break, because we all should have our defined element subcommittees that we had before. So work there. Everyone had, there was a Google sheet that people had that had their items in there. So, find your Google sheet. We use that. I think we need a fancy report back, but if we can keep it in those Google Sheets, and that's something I think make it easier for us to kind of include and go with. And then at our next meeting, let's say we do the framework on the downtown improvement and a report back on, subcommittees, right? What are those one, size them as you think were appropriate for committee, but what are the 1 to 3 things, maybe time frame it 1 to 2 years back to the planning board and select board, because some of these we all know, right? It's not something that's going to be done in 2 weeks or a month. They're farther arching, so we might need to get them and get the discussions going with those particular boards, far in advance. So I think we need to kind of keep a eye out on the time horizon, if that makes sense. Okay. And then anybody have a passion for communication, wants to kind of team up with Dan, who's not getting things dumped on him or thrown on him, or whatever that was, to kind of figure out what we do there.
I'd be happy to chat with Dan, see if it's Chris here, see if you and I can kind of sort this out a little bit. All right.
Thanks, Chris.
You got it.
Next, we can figure out how we tag it in, and
Right.
I'll also reach out to it's the town manager and probably Eton from the planning board, and head of the select board as well, to talk about what their thoughts are in terms of what role we would play in the next town meeting, assuming one's coming sooner rather than later.
Right. Yep. I think that's an easy thing to do.
And just see, and it might just be the answer, we keep the microphone time, but we put more people in line. We can stack the line.
Well, there's some strategies, but I do think there's an opportunity to have a discussion about to what degree formally we can be involved. And I think doing this communication piece with Dan kind of lays the foundation for us having a seat at the table, much more significantly, like the Finance Committee has in the past few years with their reserve and so forth. So it's a shift. I think it's good because it's more citizen involvement. It's just not, it's not as removed from the front lines. Cool.
Chris, I'd also like to second that idea of somehow including the master plan on the website, easy note in that upfront page. I think what happens to that's a good idea, because I think what happens to master plans is they're frequently shelved and forgotten. They're very easily forgotten. And I thought the whole moratorium idea is indicative of that.
Yes.
Right. The master plan had this in its scope right from the get-go, and all of a sudden, it's as if it didn't exist. And people, saw all these developments and said, "Oh my God, where did all this come from?" They needed to be reminded that, well, it fit into this thing called a plan that you all voted on several years ago and paid a lot of money for. Oh yeah, we forgot about that. And I think these kinds of plans are really easily forgotten. So yeah, so putting it on the website as you suggested, with updates and the fact that there's a group of citizens, just like everybody out in the community who are charged with reviewing this plan. I think that's really good publicity, and that should fit into that should be a big piece of the communication issue that you're talking about establishing.
Yeah. I would almost say that the updates should be permanently tagged to the master plan.
Yeah.
So that when somebody looks at the master plan over time, they can see the updates so that keeps the master plan in people's, up top, but also makes it live. So Dan, maybe we can figure out how to do that. I don't know how we'll do that.
And I think, Chris, to that point, that puts, we talked before about, should we be reviewing kind of any of the significant things going on just to be informed? I think that strategy, whether or not we have an opinion to share on a particular matter, is like almost secondary. It's rather to be cross-referencing all the progress that's happening in the community against the master plan and maintaining that kind of one version of the truth.
Yep. Awesome.
Oh, good.
Thank
One
you,
version of the truth. That's very well put.
So sorry, separate top and bounce around just a little bit. So on the downtown improvement plan, which John's going to look at it, see what the throw the net a little wide, but find the strategies. Where does anyone have, or I don't know, Jean or Andrew, if it's something that you could send out to the team, what should everybody review before we do the framework? And we all want to make sure that we're educated about it. We don't need someone to come talk to us, but especially if they've already presented somewhere.
I just shared a link with everybody to the presentation as well as the report. So you should all have it in your email box.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jean. Yeah. So if people can just look at that before the next meeting so we can know what we're frameworking. All right. And then kind of on a other communication note. So meetings, we can now go, and Andrew might have more information about this exactly. We can go to, it's possible to fully in person our meetings, or we can go hybrid, or, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, or we can stay fully remote. I will speak for myself. I'm not doing in person yet. I'm waiting till my entire family is vaccinated. So that's not an option for me. So hybrid or remote would be the options that would work for me. I don't know, what do other people want to start doing hybrid and meeting in person? What do people want to do?
Either hybrid or remote works best for me right now.
Yeah, this is fine. Although I enjoyed my meeting in the classroom last week.
I didn't realize I hadn't met all of you in person. It was hysterical. I honestly had no concept that we hadn't. I didn't know you
That's
in person.
Who you are.
Exactly. I know it was.
Yeah. Oh, wait a second. We've never seen each other in person.
No, I haven't seen anybody in 2 years. I don't know, a decade, something. I don't know. Feels like it. But so it does. So it sounds like hybrid is the way that we'll. Well, does anyone want to go in person? Because that's hybrid. Does anyone want to go in the room, or do we want to stay fully remote?
I prefer in person personally. I don't want to, but certainly Zoom. I could keep doing this. This is quite honestly the most convenient. I just find in-person meetings to be very effective. Not that this isn't, but if I had a choice, given the choice, I would pick in person.
Okay. Does anyone else want to be in person? Because we can have some people in a room and some people online. We can mix it up. Does that?
Can I ask a question? Can I just ask a question? This is actually more to Jean, because Jean has a little more familiarity on how to manage meetings and schedule them and things like that. Gene, if we were to do hybrid, we could do it so that we were in a room and we don't need NA cam, and we're just hybrid with each other, if that makes sense. Meaning, like, we would be in a room, the public would be invited to participate in that room, and then, or they could submit comments if they wanted to by email, which they can now. And then there would be like a laptop set up at the head of the table where the people that are participating via Zoom, that's where they are. Is that how we would do it, Gene?
Well, I think you'd have each person would have their own laptop, right?
No, I'm saying, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
It would, the way we do it in planning, we need NA cam because we display information to the public on one TV. And so people aren't on their laptops. We all join by Google Meet, and Cam manages the room.
Right, but given that we're not, so like, you know, let's say we were to all physically be in person for meetings, you know, let's just pretend COVID never happened and we're just meeting in person. We wouldn't typically have Cam broadcast our meetings, you know, as an advisory board. We typically don't do that. You know, that's typically just the planning board, zoning board, conservation commission, FinCom, and board of, select board, and maybe a couple other boards. So my point just is being, you know, I know planning board has to do that because they do have to plug NA cam in, but if we're coming in, if anybody is in person, we could just have them on one laptop, right?
Yep.
Yeah, just one we just have everybody, we would have this meeting set up on a laptop and the rest of us are speaking in person.
Yeah.
So it would be done a little differently, I guess. And the only other comment I would just quickly make is I'm totally comfortable continuing to go in remotely. I think there's, you know, whatever you guys want to do, I think is the way we should do it collectively. And we do have the flexibility to continue remote meetings, I think through April of 2022. Through next year, I think that's when the order was extended. So we have that flexibility. Yeah, it's only a matter of, you know, if there's some issue, and it hasn't been an issue up until this point. I think with other bodies like the planning board and the select board, I think there's a little more of a dynamic nature to them in that the public comes in for certain projects and they want to be able to interact with both the boards and the applicants in some instances. And it's a little harder to do that over this format, but that hasn't been an issue up until this point.
Yeah,
Kelly, could we have at least the next meeting as just a remote meeting, and then we'll see after that?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I've only heard so far that Holly is the only one that would prefer in person. So if no one else prefers it, I would suggest that we just stay remote.
Yeah,
right?
which is fine by me, by the way. I'm not.
You know, but if it was 3 other people who wanted to be, you know, in person, then I'd be like, let's make it more. Let's go hybrid. But if that's not the case, let's maybe do the next 2 or 3 meetings. Say we're going to stick remote, but then we'll check in. You know, for me, it's when we get some more vaccines out there, then we kind of check in maybe towards a few more months and figure out what we want to do. So let's say the next 3, we're going to go remote.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then we'll do it again. Okay. All right. So that being said, where does that put us for our next meeting?
So if we wanted to do a month from now, it would be July 19th. I don't know if the select board has a meeting that night. Doesn't look like, well.
No,
no, it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, we only have like 1 meeting in July now.
Does July 19th work for people in terms of, you know, any big gaps? I mean, we're remote, so not that this is a great vacation filler, but you don't have to be in town. All right, so July 19th.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Okay, do we want to stick at the same time at 5? Does that work? It seems like when it's remote, 5 works.
Just to let you know, it's very unlikely I'll be able to attend that meeting on July 19th. You're free to obviously go forward without me, but looking at my calendar, I see a conflict.
Do you want to? We can move to the week before or week after. Do we want to?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you guys want to accommodate me, that's fine. But I know we have a lot of people in the committee. We can't accommodate everybody all the time, so I'm fine with that.
Select board is on the 12th that I can see. So.
All right. So maybe
26th. Do you want to do the 26th?
Yeah. It is summer, so.
Does that mean go earlier or go? Was that? It's summer? Does that mean the 19th or 26th, Chris? What do you think?
we're flexible. Everybody's
right.
flexible.
I'd have a conflict on the 26th, or at least for a half an hour, the first half hour.
All right, so back to the, I mean, unless, Chris, are you okay with back-to-back meetings that night?
Yeah, that's fine. It's fine. Is it, yeah, that's fine. Right.
Okay, so the 12th.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I don't expect us to have an executive session or anything like that, but even so, we still should fit it in. So that's fine. Let's do that.
So that gives, it's what, 1, 2, and it's the 4th of July too. Do people have time to get together as their subcommittees?
Right, because that's what we have to do.
yeah.
We have
Yeah,
to
so
meet.
all right, we're going to the 26th. Done. Because you're getting, so there's homework. The subcommittees need to meet and discuss, right? Which could
Right.
require a little bit of calendar finessing amongst ourselves anyway.
All right.
So let's go for the 26th. And at that point, that meeting, we're going to do the downtown improvement framework. Each subcommittee will, bring up, and if there's discussion or debate, if you have some that you want the bigger group opinion on, but let's think about what are those strategies within your element area that we'd want to start promoting as priorities to the select board and planning board. They were certainly very open to hearing on what we've said so far. So if we see something, let's put it together. And then the communication dumping, possibly. Not really, Dan. I'm teasing.
Kelly, can I just raise one other new business issue with respect to that meeting? So we're coming to the end of another quarter here. So you might want to put on that. So I just want to put you in the frame of mind to get another report potentially drafted to be considered at that meeting. And then you can fire it off to our friends at the select board and the planning board if you so choose.
Sounds good. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
These quarters come so fast. Who knew? 3 months so quickly. All right. Does anyone have anything else? This was more of kind of a talk about what's next, but I figure it sounds like I like the idea, anyway, Jay, of how you phrase thinking about the elements and kind of how do we think that it puts more, it gives me more focus. Yeah.
The ones we started talking about.
That we started talking about, gives me more focus, like why? Because I'm like, we go back and renew it, but what's our purpose? Our purpose is trying to look at the 1 to 2 year time frame. Like, what do we need to start being a little, we've got a horizon to talk about, right? Time horizon. Let's look at our element areas and what are the things we need to start promoting as priority based on the master plan.
Right.
Right. Oh, yeah, and everybody has homework too to watch the stuff that Jean sent out on the downtown improvement plan.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anybody have anything else to talk about on this sunny Monday opening of Stevens Pond today?
Opening of Stevens Pond.
Opening of Stevens Pond. Yeah. My husband took my daughter while we were on the call. Yeah. It's good times.
All right. Good news. All right.
All right. So motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Second, or yeah.
All right. John.
Yes.
Sean.
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Holly.
Yes.
Meredith.
Yes.
Kelly. Yes. I think that's everybody, right? Yes. All right. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of June.
Good.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you.
See ya.
All right,
Bye-bye
everybody.
now.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.